Raycon Dragon stood on the observation deck of the Nemesis, his gaze fixed on the infinite void outside. The stars blinked in and out of existence like dying embers, a stark contrast to the darkness creeping from the edges of the galaxy. It was as if the cosmos itself was holding its breath. The hollow nexus was coming. The end of everything. A voice crackled through his comms. "Commander Dragon, we've intercepted a transmission from the Galactic Council. Priority message." Raycon's eyes narrowed. The Galactic Council. The ancient, self-righteous organization that believed it controlled the fate of the universe. For centuries, they'd maintained an illusion of peace, their delegates sitting in their ivory towers, pulling the strings of every empire, every war. Now, the galaxy was on the brink of collapse, and their perfect order was crumbling like dust in the wind. "Put it through," he ordered. The screen flickered to life, displaying the hologram of a pale, gaunt figure, a representative from the council, her eyes wide with terror. She wasn't who Raycon was expecting, but her message was clear. "Commander Dragon, Earth. Earth must stay out of this war," she said, her voice quivering. "The Nexus, its coming is inevitable. You have no idea what you're dealing with. You must let us handle it. If you drag Earth into this, there will be no turning back. The entire galaxy will burn." Raycon's jaw clenched. He didn't need to hear the rest. The Council had never cared for Earth. They'd barely acknowledged humanity's existence until now. And now they were begging, no, pleading, for them to stay out of a war they had no say in. It didn't sit right with him. "What is it you're not telling me?" Raycon growled, his voice heavy with suspicion. The figure hesitated, as if unsure how to proceed. Finally, she spoke again, voice trembling. "There's an artifact, one linked to the Nexus. It's on your moon. Earth must keep it contained. If it falls into the wrong hands, the Nexus will use it to open a doorway. If the doorway opens, Earth will be the first to fall." Raycon's pulse quickened, his mind racing. The hollow Nexus wasn't just a threat. It was a force of destruction unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, wiping out entire star systems, reducing them to nothing but void. And now, humanity's very survival was tied to some ancient artifact? Something hidden on Earth's moon? "Your desperation is showing," Raycon snapped, stepping closer to the screen. "You've been hiding something, haven't you? What aren't you telling me?" The hologram flickered, and the woman's face grew pale. She glanced off to the side, as if reading from a script. Before she spoke again, her words rushed. "The Nexus isn't just coming. It's already here. And it's tied to Earth. The artifact, it's a key. A key to either sealing it away forever or unleashing it. The decision is in your hands, Commander. But if Earth fights this war, if you stand against the Nexus, your planet will be the first to fall." Raycon's heart pounded in his chest. He wasn't one for speeches, but one thing was clear: the Council had been playing a dangerous game with humanity. They wanted Earth to stand down, to stay neutral, so they could have their own war without interference. But Raycon wasn't about to let anyone sacrifice his home. "Let me get this straight," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "You're telling me to let you and your precious council decide the fate of the galaxy while Earth sits idly by? You think I'm going to play that game?" The representative's voice wavered, but her message didn't change. "You have no idea what you're up against, Dragon. The Nexus is unstoppable. If Earth enters this conflict, it will only escalate the destruction. You must stay out of it. For your own survival." Raycon turned away from the screen, his fists clenched. The Council had long since proven their cowardice. They didn't care about Earth. They saw it as nothing more than a backwater planet. But this was different. This was about survival, not politics. Raycon wasn't about to let them dictate humanity's fate. "Earth will fight," he muttered under his breath. His comms buzzed again. This time, the voice was familiar. Doreen, the diplomat who had been working behind the scenes to keep peace with the Council. He was someone Raycon had known for years, a man of words, not action. And right now, Raycon knew Doreen wouldn't take this news well. Raycon, Doreen's voice came through, calm but tinged with urgency. I've seen the message from the Council. You can't be serious about this. We have no choice but to comply. The Nexus is a threat to all life. We can't afford to make enemies of the Council. Not now. Raycon's jaw clenched. You heard what they said, Doreen. They want us to stay out of the war. They want us to hand over control of the artifact, give them the keys to our survival. And for what? So they can sit in their ivory towers while the galaxy burns? We're not prepared for war, Raycon, Doreen countered. We've never been. We're not like them. We're not an empire, not a galactic power. This isn't our fight. Raycon's voice hardened. And you're willing to let them walk all over us? To let them destroy everything we've fought for just so they can keep their little game of politics intact? There was silence on the other end for a long moment, and then Doreen spoke again, more quietly. Raycon, this isn't just about politics. We're talking about survival. The Nexus isn't a threat we can fight. It's something beyond us. Raycon's thoughts flashed to the men and women under his command, the soldiers, the pilots, the warriors who had fought and bled for Earth's survival. He knew what they would do. They wouldn't cower in the shadows, waiting for some higher power to save them. They would fight. They would fight until every last one of them was gone, and Raycon would lead them into hell itself if it meant saving Earth. The Council has no say in this, Raycon muttered, more to himself than to Doreen. I won't let them decide the fate of my home. He ended the transmission abruptly, feeling the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. The next few hours would decide everything. The artifact, the war, the fate of Earth, everything hinged on his actions. He turned back to the view of space. The stars flickered again, and for the briefest moment, Raycon saw it, an immense, dark mass at the edge of the galaxy. The Hollow Nexus. It was coming. And Earth wasn't going to sit back and let the galaxy decide its fate. Raycon stood in the command center of the Nemesis, the hum of the engines and the quiet murmurs of his team in the background. His mind raced, calculating his next steps. The artifact, whatever it was on Earth's moon, hidden beneath layers of secrecy. The Galactic Council had made it clear, they were willing to do whatever it took to control it. And if that meant dragging Earth into the flames of war, then they were willing to risk it all. We can't waste time, Raycon said, his voice sharp and focused. Get me a direct line to the Council. I want to know who's really behind this. Who else knows about the artifact? His second-in-command, Lieutenant Mara Voss, nodded sharply, tapping at her console. I'm on it, sir. If anyone knows more than they're saying, we'll find them. Raycon's mind flickered back to the transmission from the Galactic Council. The way they'd begged, their fear too real to ignore. The Nexus was coming, and Earth was somehow tied to it. But why? What could Earth have that made it such a focal point? He couldn't trust the Council, their manipulations were as old as the galaxy itself. His instincts told him something bigger was at play. And he intended to find out what. We need to move fast, Raycon said, pacing the room. The artifact might be our only chance to stop the Nexus, or to destroy it. Either way, it's on Earth. We're going to find it before the Council gets their hands on it. Mara turned to face him, her eyes steely with determination. What do we do when we find it, sir? The Council wants it sealed, but we don't know what it can do. What if it's worse than the Nexus itself? Raycon's eyes hardened. If it's a weapon, we'll use it. If it's a trap, we'll burn it down. We don't have the luxury of second-guessing anymore. Mara's lips curled into a faint smile. A bit extreme, don't you think? Not extreme enough, Raycon muttered. Hours later, Raycon's task force arrived in the shadow of Earth's moon. The Nemesis was an aging ship, but it was fast and heavily armed, a weapon in the right hands. Raycon stood at the helm, watching the moon grow larger on the view screen. The silence in the command center was deafening, but it only served to sharpen his focus. The Council had made their move, and it was time to counterattack. The ship entered a low orbit above the moon's surface, and Raken's team began preparations for deployment. His soldiers, the best of Earth's elite space forces, moved with precision, checking their weapons, ensuring their suits were sealed. Rakon scanned their faces. There was no fear. These men and women knew what was at stake. They understood that this mission could very well be a one-way trip. "We're about to step into the unknown," Rakon said, his voice steady but carrying the weight of the mission. "Stay sharp. The artifact is the key. We find it, we take it, and we get out. No heroics. No mistakes." The team nodded, their expressions set in grim determination. Raken's boots thudded heavily against the metal floor as he led the way into the airlock. They were stepping into the cold vacuum of space, and his heart beat in time with the countdown to their deployment. The moon's surface loomed ahead, a barren landscape with jagged cliffs and strange, ancient ruins scattered across the plains. The artifact had to be hidden beneath all of this, tucked away somewhere only the Council could find. It was up to Rakon and his team to uncover it first. The airlock hissed, and the team was ejected into the harsh lunar landscape. Raken's helmet visor flashed to life, a glowing map overlaying his vision. The coordinates given to him by the Council were close, just beyond a series of massive ruins, a structure hidden in plain sight. His boots kicked up the dust of the dead world as he led the charge, his soldiers flanking him, moving with the deadly precision of a well-oiled machine. As they neared the ruins, Raken's comms buzzed to life. "Commander, we've got company," Mara's voice crackled through the static. "We're not alone." Raken's hand instinctively went to his sidearm. "How many?" "Hard to say. But they're not friendly. We're picking up weapon signatures." Raken's eyes narrowed. The Council's pawns weren't the only ones after the artifact. Someone else was on the moon, and they weren't there to negotiate. "Get ready," Rakon growled. "Move out. Cover the perimeter." The team spread out, weapons raised, scanning the barren landscape for any sign of movement. Raken's pulse quickened. Whoever they were closing in fast. Then, from the shadows of the ancient ruins, a group of figures emerged. They were clad in black armor, their faces hidden behind dark visors, moving with the fluidity of predators. The Ravagers. Raken's stomach tightened. These were the galaxy's most ruthless mercenaries, and they didn't care about the Nexus. They cared about one thing: chaos. They'd been hunting him for years, and now it seemed they were hunting him for Earth's secret. "Damn it," Rakon muttered. "Get into position. We're not letting them take this." The Ravagers charged, weapons raised, and the air erupted with the deafening crackle of gunfire. Rakon dove behind a rock, firing his pulse rifle with deadly accuracy. His soldiers followed suit, engaging the enemy in a brutal firefight. The sound of explosions and energy blasts filled the air, the moon's silence shattered by the chaos of combat. Raken's focus was razor-sharp. He moved like a shadow, calculating every step, every shot, every kill. His team was fluid, precise, covering each other's backs, pushing the Ravagers back. But it wasn't enough. There were too many of them. Rakon could hear their leader, Kor, barking orders, his voice a cruel sneer over the comms. "You think you can stop us, Dragon? You're nothing. Just another pawn for the Council's war." Rakon gritted his teeth, squeezing the trigger again. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." A Ravager charged at him, a hulking figure wielding a massive energy blade. Rakon ducked under the swing, pivoting quickly and slamming his fist into the enemy's gut. The man staggered back, and Rakon took the opening, drawing his sidearm and firing point-blank into the Ravager's chest. "Keep moving!" Rakon shouted, rallying his team. "We're almost there." But as they pushed deeper into the ruins, the ground beneath them rumbled. A low, ominous hum began to vibrate through the moon's surface, sending a chill down Raken's spine. "We've reached it," Mara said, her voice strained with urgency. "The artifact, it's here." Rakon stepped forward, his eyes locking onto a massive stone structure. The hum grew louder, more intense, and he could feel the power emanating from it. The artifact was close. "We're not the only ones after it," Raycon said, voice grim. "Stay sharp. This isn't over." As they approached the heart of the structure, the shadows of the ravagers loomed closer, and the threat of the Nexus hung heavy in the air. Earth's fate rested in their hands, and Raycon wasn't about to let it slip through his fingers. The fight was far from over, but Raycon could already feel the weight of the galaxy's future pressing down on him. The artifact was within reach, but so was the destruction they had been warned about. In this game of war and survival, there were no easy answers. Only blood, sacrifice, and a choice that would echo across the universe. As the last echoes of battle faded, Raycon Dragon stood at the threshold of the ancient structure, his heart hammering in his chest. The air was thick with dust, the ruins dark and oppressive. His team, battle-worn and bloodied, gathered behind him. The Ravagers had been repelled, for now, but their leader, Kor, had made it clear that this was only the beginning. He had been searching for the artifact for reasons Raycon didn't fully understand, but he couldn't afford to let the Ravagers gain the upper hand. Not now. Not when everything depended on them reaching the artifact first. Raycon adjusted his helmet and stepped forward, his soldiers flanking him. The structure before them was a relic, old, dark, and alien. It pulsed with a strange, otherworldly energy, and Raycon could feel it in the pit of his stomach. The artifact was here, hidden within the heart of the ruin, its power seeping through the very walls. "Mara," Raycon said, his voice steady despite the tension coiling inside him. "Check the perimeter. We don't know how many more of them are out there." "Yes, sir," Mara responded, her voice sharp as she relayed orders to the team. Raycon turned to face the entrance. The energy signature on his visor was fluctuating wildly now, the artifact's presence undeniable. The hum was louder, almost like a heartbeat, as though the structure itself was alive. He could feel the gravity of what they were about to uncover, the stakes had never been higher. The team moved swiftly, positioning themselves around the entrance. Raycon couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, but there was no time to waste. Every second that passed, the Ravagers were closing in, and the threat of the Nexus hung like a blade above them. He reached for his sidearm, checking the charge. His mind was already calculating the next steps, analyzing every possible scenario. But one thing was certain, if the Ravagers found the artifact, if the Council got their hands on it, humanity would be nothing more than a pawn in a much larger game. He wouldn't let that happen. "Clear," Mara's voice crackled in his comms, snapping him back to the present. "We're good to go." Raycon nodded. "Then let's move." The team moved in, their boots echoing softly against the stone floor. As they advanced deeper into the structure, the air grew colder, the walls seeming to close in around them. The artifact's energy intensified with every step, and Raycon could feel the weight of its presence pressing down on him. At the end of the corridor, a massive door loomed before them, covered in intricate symbols and alien markings. It was a barrier, and Raycon knew that only the worthy, or the desperate, could pass through it. "Everyone, on your guard," Raycon ordered. Mara stepped forward, her eyes scanning the door. "This is it. The artifact is behind here. We just need to figure out how to open it." Raycon's hand hovered over his comms. "This structure is ancient. Whatever technology is in here, it's not going to be easy to bypass. Stay sharp." "Sir," one of the soldiers called from the back, "I'm detecting a signal." "They're here. The Ravagers are closing in fast." Raycon's pulse quickened. They didn't have much time. Mara moved quickly, pulling up a series of symbols on her console. "If I can decipher this pattern, we might be able to activate the door." "Do it," Raycon urged. "We don't have time." The sound of boots thundering through the ruins echoed in the distance. The Ravagers were coming. Kor's voice rang out, a cruel sneer in his tone. "I can hear you, Dragon. You think you can run? You're in my domain now." Raycon didn't respond. There was no point in wasting breath on the Ravager leader. He turned his attention back to Mara, who was working furiously to crack the code on the door. The seconds felt like hours, each one adding to the pressure. Suddenly, the door emitted a low hum, and the symbols began to shift, realigning themselves as if responding to Mara's input. "I've got it," she shouted. "Get ready." Raken's heart skipped a beat as the door began to open, the heavy metal groaning in protest. A surge of energy pulsed from within, filling the chamber with an unnatural light. The artifact, whatever it was just beyond the threshold. The air seemed to crackle with its power. But as the door slid open, Raken's worst fear came to life. The ravagers were already inside. Kor's cruel laugh echoed through the chamber as he stepped forward, his weapon drawn. "You really thought you could take it? This galaxy is mine for the taking. And you," he pointed a gloved finger at Rakan. "You're nothing but a speck of dust in my way." Rakan didn't flinch. He had been to hell and back before. He had fought battles where the odds were impossible, and he had won. He wasn't about to let Kor, or anyone else, dictate Earth's future. "We'll see about that," Rakan said, voice low and dangerous. In an instant, the room erupted into chaos. Kor's ravagers charged, weapons raised, but Rakan and his team were ready. The air hummed with the sound of plasma weapons and explosions. Raken's rifle spit out bursts of fire as he took down two of the ravagers in quick succession. His soldiers followed suit, moving with deadly precision, cutting down their enemies one by one. But Kor was relentless. He was a machine of pure rage, his every movement calculated and brutal. He swung his massive energy blade at Rakan, but the commander was faster, ducking under the strike and landing a punch that sent Kor staggering back. The Ravager leader growled, shaking off the hit, his eyes wild with fury. "You think you can defeat me?" Kor snarled, slashing at Rakan again. Rakan ducked and rolled, narrowly avoiding the blade's deadly arc. "I don't need to defeat you, Kor. I just need to survive long enough to finish this." The fight raged on, the tension thick in the air. Rakan moved like a shadow, always one step ahead of Kor's brutal strikes, always calculating his next move. But Kor was stronger, faster, and more unpredictable. Rakan knew he couldn't keep this up forever. "Cover me!" Rakan shouted to his team, even as he continued to dodge Kor's onslaught. "I'm going for the artifact." Mara nodded. "We've got your six." Raken's heart pounded in his chest as he sprinted toward the artifact. The room seemed to stretch in front of him, every step echoing in his mind. He could feel the power of the artifact now, its energy calling to him, pulling him forward. He reached the center of the room, his hand outstretched. And then, just as his fingers brushed the surface of the artifact, the ground beneath him shook. The artifact was alive. It reacted violently to his touch, sending a pulse of raw energy into the air. The walls trembled, the very fabric of the structure groaning as if it were about to collapse. Rakan staggered back, narrowly avoiding the blast that erupted from the artifact. But even as the shockwave hit, he could feel it, the power surging through his body, a force unlike anything he had ever experienced. And then, as if in response to the artifact's energy, the nexus stirred. Rakan's heart sank as the walls around him began to crack, the air growing heavy with the weight of its presence. The nexus was coming, and Earth was in its path. Rakan's mind raced as the tremors intensified beneath his feet. The nexus was awakening, its energy reverberating through the structure like an incoming storm. His fingers gripped the artifact, the pulsing energy coursing through him, its dark power both intoxicating and terrifying. He had no time to consider the consequences, he had to act. "Kor!" Rakan shouted over the chaos, his voice cutting through the commotion. The Ravager leader, still recovering from the skirmish, turned toward him, a crazed smile spreading across his face. "You really think you can control it?" Kor's voice was dripping with mockery. "You've just sealed your fate, Dragon." Rakan ignored him, focusing on the artifact, now fully illuminated by a blinding blue light. He could feel it, a connection, a link to something vast and ancient. The Nexus, somehow, was bound to this object. The galaxy's destruction wasn't just imminent, it was already in motion, and only this artifact could stop it, or accelerate it. You don't understand, Raycon muttered to himself, the realization dawning on him like a hammer strike. It's not just a weapon, it's the key. His team was still engaged in battle, holding off the remaining ravagers as best as they could. Mara's voice crackled through his comms, strained but resolute. We're holding them off, Commander, but they're relentless. You need to activate the artifact now. Raycon didn't respond immediately, his mind locked on the artifact's energy signature. If he could just tap into it, channel it, he could direct the Nexus away from Earth, maybe even destroy it. But there was no guarantee. The risk of unleashing its full power was unimaginable. If he miscalculated, if he failed to control it, the consequences would be catastrophic. For Earth. For the galaxy. For everyone. Kor's menacing laugh interrupted his thoughts. You've already lost, Dragon. There's no stopping what's coming. The Nexus will consume everything. And you're going to be the one who brings it to Earth. Raycon's hand tightened around the artifact. The power surged once more, and a low hum filled the room. The ground cracked beneath him, and he staggered, trying to maintain his grip. Mara's voice was desperate now, frantic. Commander, if you don't act, we're all dead. The Nexus is moving. It's pulling everything toward it. Raycon's instincts kicked in. The Ravagers were too close to the artifact. He had to make a decision, and he had to make it now. Without another word, he threw himself forward, diving toward the artifact's base and slamming his palm against it. The moment his skin touched its surface, the world around him seemed to explode in blinding light. Raycon's mind was flooded with images, visions of distant stars, dying civilizations, and a darkness that consumed everything in its path. He could feel the pull of the Nexus, its malevolent will reaching across the void. He could feel its hunger. The galaxy, its stars, its planets, they were all just fuel to feed the beast. But then, as the visions surged through him, something changed. A flicker of resistance, something deep inside the artifact, fought back against the overwhelming force of the Nexus. Raycon realized it wasn't just a weapon, it was a safeguard. A trap. The artifact was the galaxy's last defense, a mechanism designed to contain the Nexus, not control it. But in his hands, he held the power to either unleash it or destroy it. Raycon's heart pounded in his chest, each beat a drum of war. The Nexus was close. He could feel it, its presence growing stronger with each passing second. The Ravagers, though momentarily stunned by the energy radiating from the artifact, were closing in again. He had only one chance. Raycon, Mara's voice came through, strained but insistent. What are you waiting for? You have to stop it. He swallowed hard. I'm not just stopping it, Mara. I'm going to end it. With that, he pressed deeper into the artifact's surface, channeling every ounce of strength, every scrap of willpower he had into the raw energy pouring from the object. The artifact began to resonate, its power surging outward in violent waves. The Nexus reacted, shifting, swirling in the distance. But it wasn't retreating, it was fighting back, desperate to break free. Raycon clenched his teeth as the energy coursed through him. His skin burned, and his vision blurred, but he didn't let go. He couldn't. Get ready. Raycon shouted to his team. This is going to get ugly. Kor charged forward, a maddened gleam in his eye. You think you can stop me? You're already dead, Dragon. Raycon didn't respond. He couldn't afford distractions. The artifact was pulling more energy now, building to a crescendo. And then, just as Kor reached him, the entire room seemed to explode in a wave of energy. Kor screamed in agony as the shockwave hit him, sending him flying backward. The Ravagers were thrown to the floor, their weapons scattering across the room. The structure groaned, cracking open under the pressure. Raycon's body screamed in protest as the energy tore through him, but he held on, locking his focus on the Nexus. The artifact pulsed one final time, and then, the Nexus screamed. It wasn't the roar of a star collapsing, nor the cry of a dying civilization. It was something worse. A sound that reverberated through space itself. A sound of infinite hunger, of a void that could not be satisfied. The Nexus was collapsing, its power was being drawn back into itself, contained once again by the artifact. The ground shook, and the structure began to crumble around them, but Raycon didn't let go. His team scrambled to their feet, falling back as the walls cracked open, the ceiling starting to cave in. They couldn't stay. Not now. Mara. Get out of here. Raycon ordered, his voice barely audible over the roar of destruction. Everyone, move. But even as he shouted, Raycon knew it was too late. The Nexus was still collapsing, but its destruction would be as catastrophic as its existence. The entire structure was coming apart, and there was no escape. Raycon reached for the detonator at his side, an emergency failsafe. His last-ditch effort to ensure that the Nexus never escaped. He pressed the button, triggering a massive explosion designed to obliterate everything in the surrounding area. The last thing Raycon heard was the sound of his team scrambling for the exit. Then, the world exploded in fire and light. When Raycon regained consciousness, he was surrounded by rubble. His head throbbed with pain, and his body felt like it had been torn apart. But he was alive. Somehow, he was alive. Mara, he croaked, trying to push himself up. Mara. He heard her voice, faint but strong. I'm here, Commander. We're all here. Raycon breathed a sigh of relief, but the weight of the moment crashed down on him. The artifact, the Nexus, it was all over now. The galaxy would never be the same. But Earth had survived. You did it, Commander, Mara said, her voice trembling with emotion. Raycon nodded, his eyes burning with the weight of his choices. We all did. The battle was won. But the war, for humanity's survival, was far from over.